Alright, today we're going to be taking this skull of a dog, okay, and turning it into this 3D model. This is the complete workflow for photogrammetry that allows you to scan objects into 3D and print them. It's even got, you can see the inside of the model. It's got all the detail from the inside of this model, just about on the inside of this one. All the nasal cavities, everything. So, if you are interested in getting this level of detail using photogrammetry, this is my workflow. I hope you enjoy. Alright, today we're going to be looking at scanning a dog skull into photogrammetry for the 3D mesh. And I got the skull right here. You can see that the skull has like a tooth good on this side, but not tooth good on this side. But that's okay because we can mirror image the model. It also has the opening in the back, which is flawed on this one side. Notice that it's the same side as the tooth. So that works out really well. I'm going to mirror this side over to this side, and that'll fix that. And then we have the jaw. Okay. Now, to get started, what I did is I stained the skull using walnut. You take a walnut, or take several walnuts actually, and you boil the walnuts, you know, like the ones that are on the ground with the green husks. You boil those, and you get a stain. And that stain is super good for dyeing skulls. So if you happen to have a walnut tree and you find those green husky walnuts, collect them, put them in a box, and throw them in a big, huge boiler and boil it. And then empty the walnuts out and collect the stain. That stain is invaluable when it comes down to like wood, skulls. I use it on a whole bunch of other things. I even used it on miniatures before. It works out super good as a stain. It's got like a fat to it, so it kind of sticks to the model, and it always has this really just old type of look to it. So this was a brand new one, and this skull, you can obviously see that it hadn't been properly bleached. So it has some fat still in it, but still that stain managed to get in there pretty good, even in the areas that had the excess fat still in the skull. Not to get gross, but still. So first what we do is grab the skull, and you get a hot melt glue gun. Okay, bigger the better. And what we're going to do is mount this on this, just like that. So you have to mount it in a way that when it rotates around, that the photogrammetry is going to get the underside of the model. So I always mount it just about like that. And I'll use some kind of heavy base, kind of like an old tile or a piece of wood. But yeah, I'll mount it just like that using hot melt glue. And in this area is where I'm going to have to kind of fix it up a little bit in post in Blender. Also, you can see the ear is on this side, but the ear isn't on this side. So this is the all kinds of little flaws in this, but they're all on the one side of the model. So I think this is a really good example of not only the scanning process, but the cleaning up process when it comes down to modeling. So I'm just going to let that heat up a little bit, and then we'll mount it to the stick. So before I mount these, you're going to see that this is shiny right in this area. Can't really see it on camera. But if you have any shininess on the model whatsoever, you have to spray it with matte finish beforehand. So you stain it. If it happens to have any gloss points, make sure that you hit it with matte finish and then mount it. Because if you don't, if you mount it and then use the hot melt, the alcohol from this will release the hot melt and the skull will fall off. So This one I already happened to spray. I haven't sprayed the jaw yet, but I just wanted to show you that gloss points on them have to be eliminated, and I use Matte Finish by Rust-Oleum. So easy peasy, you just put a big old glob of glue on that whatever stick or wire or whatever you got sticking out of, and then just let it go, let it dry. If you're impatient, don't be, or get some of these handy helpers. With them you could just click it and attach it to the skull. Just let it dry. Yeah. Okay, just to make the bases, you just use a piece of wire like that, curl it up. Again, these helping hands really work out quite well for all projects, but especially these. So just put it down like that. Place it over. Put a gob of hot melt down. Boom. Alright, to mount a jaw, I just go like this. Put some of this here. That seems to be a good area to remove it. Oh, it's got like a little ring in there. And I mount it just like that. This will get the front, the back, and if you mount it just a little bit like that, you'll also get the underside of the teeth, as long as you get a good angle at it like that. So it all depends what's harder to model for you, is modeling the teeth harder or the backside of these jaw. Alright, these two seem about ready as they get. I'm going to do the upper skull first. Okay, so here's a little bit about the rig. It's a Sony a7R4 and it's set to be hooked up to a circuit that automates it, so it'll take a picture, rotate the stepper, take a picture, rotate, take a picture. I'll show you that here in a second. One of the things I would mention is that the higher the megapixels, the less you have to be zoomed in. Once you zoom in, you cannot zoom different zooms. In other words, if I have the camera positioned up and down, up and facing down to the model, like that, okay? And if I move the camera, I cannot adjust the zoom. I can adjust the focus, but not the zoom. Okay? So whatever zoom I'm at, I have to stay there. It's at the lowest ISO setting, the highest f-stop setting, and the only thing that you have to adjust is the timing. And you can go all the way down to 3 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you want. Don't use flashes ever. It's not good whatsoever. Use fluorescent lighting in your scene. You can see these really bright fluorescents on both sides. So I'm going to move the camera over to the other side and kind of show you, but first, while I'm still in this view, notice that when it rotates, it's in view. Okay, the build platform's in view, it's in view, but it's not totally zoomed in. Okay, it doesn't have to be at a higher megapixel. At a lower megapixel camera, you do have to get it zoomed in a little bit further. Alright, so on this side I'll show you that it's got this little rig on it, okay, that holds the IR sensor. You can get these at your local hardware store. They just go like that and they close. But it's got a wire, and the wire goes up, and it's got a gator clip. The gator clip holds the IR sensor, or the IR light, And the IR light has, infrared light, has this, it's shrink wrap around that, and it is cut so it looks like a flower. The reason I got that is because the fluorescence will wash out the IR if you don't have something that back protects the IR light. The paper clip is just for my old Nikon camera, so ignore that. So what I do is I just mount it to the camera just like this, just squeeze it a few times, and it's all plastic anyway, so it's not going to hurt the camera. And then I just bend that wire to match it with the IR sensor. It is the 105 lens, as I mentioned, so I will put it on autofocus at first. I will lightly press this, it'll beep, that'll tell me it's in focus, and then I turn it off. Okay, now it's in or manual focus mode. So don't use autofocus when you're using photogrammetry. Big tip. Alright, sweet. So now I'll position this camera so you can see what else I got over here. So the little box runs a stepper motor. It also runs an Android camera, a Nikon camera, or a Sony AR7 IV. So it's got those frequencies built into this little device. So if I wanted to use my cell phone, I could, as long as it's Android. More about this in a video that I posted down in the description below. You can buy the schematics for this, and I supply the board file and everything else that you can then get made and build. It's not that bad. It is an awesome utility. So if you are interested in taking the brave route of getting all the parts and putting one together, I supply instructional videos and everything on how to do that. So the green button will start the process. And now I'll rotate the camera to show you what it's doing. So it's rotating the model. Really small increment. Taking a shot. Really small increment. So it moves at about maybe about 2 millimeters, 3 millimeters, and then takes another shot. The full rotation is 50 photos. And then what I'll do is I have to move the camera. So what I do is move the camera down. I'll position it down and then point it directly at the model. Not mess around with the zoom. We'll fix the autofocus, and then I'll repeat the process I just did at a different camera angle. And the only thing is I only move this camera down and then rotate it, down, rotate it. So I'll get 3 camera angles, one from above, one in the middle, and one from below. And that's enough to get a lot of detail. Altogether, it's about 150 to 200 shots. Once I move the camera, I'll show you what that looks like again, just for fun. Alright, so I'll make the adjustments here. So I'll lower the camera. To lower this camera too. Alright, then I'll loosen and then rotate the camera so that it's back into frame. Notice the build plate is still in the frame, still sort of centered where it's at. The automatic focus bracket needs to be moved up. I'll put it on autofocus for a sec, and that generally should help. There we go. So you have to put it on autofocus before you can move that bracket. Oops. So I'll move the bracket to right there in the model. You can see this little white bracket. And then I'll hit the autofocus. and then again I'll turn that off. Boom. I didn't zoom or anything else. That's the only thing I changed, was the positioning of the camera, the focus point, which is near about the focus point it was before, and then it's ready to go. I hit the green button and away it goes. Boom. So I'll do that one more time. Last time it was a little harder. I have to lower the tripod and point it up, and that'll get the underside of the model. That one's a little harder to get on focus as far as like filming is concerned without a camera crew, so I'll do that one myself. Alright, you can see camera's totally, its lowest position on this tripod just about, and then it's pointing up. And there it goes. All these wires over here, that's just part of the nature, not even hooked up to this thing, so just ignore that. I think there's there's like a wire that goes to the stepper motor, and that's really it. There's a wire that goes to the stepper motor. It's got 4 wires on the inside of it, and there's a wire that plugs into the device, and then the IR sensor hooks up to the camera. So 3 wires altogether coming out of that device. Now that it's done, I'll generally take and do the top of the model first. I'll process all the photos, and I'll put it into the software and everything else, and then I'll do the jaw after that. So yeah, we'll move on to the software portion of it, show you what that workflow looks like.
Alright, so if you do this process, I would highly suggest having a computer on your network that you don't use. It's the best way I found. So this computer only does this. It only processes images. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll throw my SD card in it, and then I'll access it via no machine on a different computer. So I'm on a Mac accessing a Windows machine. I would highly suggest maybe a Windows machine for this, because Metashape works a little bit better with Windows, in my humble opinion. So you're going to get this thing called the Adobe DNG converter. Okay, you can get this at adobe.com. Adobe DNG converter. You have your SD card in the machine. Okay, you make a folder on your hard drive. I'm going to call this dog. Okay, because that's what I took a picture of. You see, I got many of these: Raven Skull Leaf, New Mink 2. So I'm going to run this. This is a setup. Oops. So I need to go over here to this one. Yep. Yes. So what it wants me to do is select the SD card. Remember, there's nothing else on this card except for those images. All other images were deleted. So I'm going to select the folder it was in. Okay. Then it says save to a new location. Well, I'm going to select the folder I just made called dog. Okay. And it's going to automatically take that as far as it's going to turn it in all the images to what I need. Okay, you don't have to set anything else. That was it. Surely you can name it dog, but I would keep it just the way it is, and then convert. And there we go. It turns them all into DNGs. So Metashape doesn't like ARWs at all. Neither does a lot of programs except for Lightroom. So that's the only program that I found that likes ARWs. ARWs are sweet though. They contain a lot of information. Just too much for most programs. So these are going to process and then end up into the dog folder when done. And when they're in the dog folder, after this gets done, I can show you the next step. Alright, so all your files have been converted. Then you find yourself meta shape. Only click on it once. Alright, so eventually it'll pop up. And then what you're going to do is import dog in here. So I just go like this, find the dog folder, boom, kind of put it over here so I can get a hold of it, get over here, and drag dog here. Single cameras. Got all these cameras, tons and tons of cameras. Alright, then we go File, Save As, and we save it in the dog folder. In this case, if something happens, you can always get a hold of it. Call it dog. Keep it very simple. Alright, so I'm going to batch process things. I like doing that. I'm going to add. And the first one is I got to align all the photos, and I want the accuracy. This is the fun part. Oh, there we go. So you double click on it. It's kind of sketchy right there. So you want the highest, the rest you want to leave alone. Then you want to add a new one. And this new one is going to be called Build Mesh. Okay. And it's going to be made of depth maps, not dense cloud. I want that on ultra high. I put the face count rather high. I put it like 4 million. And then add another one. This one is going to be called Build Texture. I like having this. Later on, we're going to be using this. So I always grab a calculator because I forget this one. So 4096 times 2 equals 8192. That's what you want. Okay, so we got align photos, build a mesh, build a texture. Okay. This box really important. Save project after each step. So when you do this and you go to sleep and you wake up 5 days later, because that's how long it'll take. It might take shorter, but you can see it's 102 cameras. Not too bad actually. So it shouldn't take that long. Maybe a day. Yes. Alright, there we go. So it's going to do its thing, and you can't use that computer until it gets done. So I'll see you in a little while. Alright, so here is the skull all done. It's on this computer, and in order to interface it, you got to just close out that. Just going to kind of make this a little bit bigger. Okay, best thing you can do is get in and get out with this. So what we need to do is get rid of this platform before we bring it into another program, because it's just a waste of polygons. You can see even it captured these really thin pins. That's how detailed it got. Look at those pins. Wow. Alright, so what we do is we go into freeform selection. We get it to an angle where we can make a good selection, and we net lasso all the garbage. Okay, then we hit the X. Then we repeat that. Just get rid of all the garbage. X. To rotate is kind of a pain in this program, so you got to go back to the arrow, then you can rotate. So I'm just going to rotate this so I can get a good chunk of this pipe, like that. Yeah. Go back to my selection tool. Carefully, ever so carefully, get in here. Then kind of check that to make sure I didn't crop off anything important. Doesn't look like it. Okay, now that I got it to a point where I got the skull, here's another little trick. So get to an angle where you can highlight the entire skull. Whoops. Like that. And then go invert selection and then X. So this will get rid of a lot of these little things that you're never going to be able to capture. Look at the detail of that. Now had it been, I didn't have to have that platform in there, it would have even been more detailed. And right now you're looking at it through a computer of a computer too. So I'm just saving this project. And then we're going to do the export. So I export the model. Really don't do any of the fixing in this program. This is a dog. I want to export the texture along with it. See how it says export texture? I want it as a JPEG for that, because I'm not really using it for anything. And the rest looks good. And then we're going to export it here in a second. So when this is done, I'll let you know. Alright, so once I've done exporting, I bring it into Blender. So what I'm going to do, I've saved it to a flash drive and brought it over to my computer in the other room where I do 3D modeling. So I delete everything out of the scene, and then I just go import and then import, wait for an object. And I want dog. So very important that you don't close holes in the other program, because it'll lead to problems when it comes down to your workflow later on. For example, you might not be able to boolean the object correctly. You will run into just a whole myriad of things, because when it fills the hole, it doesn't care how it fills it, it just fills it. So it doesn't fill it quite correctly. especially if there's more than one hole, which there was. So here it is in Blender. It's really small. That doesn't really matter at all. So first thing we're going to do is set the origin to geometry. Okay, we're going to move it into the center of the scene, and then I'm going to orientate it correctly. So to orientate it correctly, first I hop into Z. Okay, Z, when I go into positive Z, I should see a top down of the model. Okay. Also, here's Y. Y should be the front of my front of it. So the first thing you're going to do is just going to kind of get it as best you can centered. Okay, then you're going to hop into X, and then you're going to orientate it this way. You're going to keep continuing to hop into X, Y, and Z until you're 100% happy with the center of the model. Don't worry, we're going to be testing the center of the model even more so here. Okay, so there's that. This one doesn't really matter as much, so I just kind of tip it just for that. This one's pretty important, so see this tooth in the front, see how it's got like a center point? What I want to do is make sure that this line is going down the center of the tooth. So you can see here, there's two teeth on this side, two teeth on this side. I want to make sure this green line is going directly down the center of that. Okay, so I hop into Z again. Another thing that I look out for is on the top of the Z is that this bone right here it's got to go down the center of that. So what you could do for that one is you rotate it just a little bit. Again, there's going to be another opportunity for another test here, so this is clearly not going to be over with. Okay, so now we got it roughed in. Okay, first thing we do is apply rotation scale, and then we go to add mesh cube. Alright, we move this cube so that it looks like this. Cool. And this is going to represent the center of this object. Alright, so you can see how the tooth right there, and then here's the center of that fin. So again, what we want to do is position the model so it takes and intersects that tooth and intersects the fin. So it's going to take a little bit of time to get it orientated. Lots of little rotations. This setup part is crucial that you nail it. So it's a lot of rotating in one sector, then rotating back in the other sector to get it to match up. And sometimes you're just not going to get it. Just not going to get it. So there is a way to really get it. You got to get it pretty dead on though, and then you can cheat. Okay? And cheating is going to cost you some CPU usage. If you get stuck in a view, just frame all. Okay, we got it close. I'm going to really cheat now. I'm going to go into sculpt mode on the skull. This skull is made of millions and millions of polygons, so you can't cheat too much. So you go to elastic deform, okay? And what you do is you move this fin to the center of the line. And you make sure that it doesn't collapse into it. So you can see that I don't see this flat object being moved into this at all. The double wall here, right here, this little gap right here is a concern. So to rectify that, I make fine adjustments. Good. And then the tooth is the same way. I'll go in here, kind of bend it around a little bit. Looks good. That nasal cavity looks good. Everything else looks pretty okay. So now I got a natural center, and later on I can inflate this area here. I'll show you what that means. Alright, now that I have everything lined up using this cube, I'm going to use the cube as a boolean. So I'm just going to be going into object mode. Let's take a break from the video and then I'll come back and do the boolean part. Alright, so this next part takes a little bit of machine resources. So click on the object, boolean. We want to choose the cube. And then cross your fingers because sometimes it just doesn't work out. So the idea was this cuts this in half. Okay. In this case, it sort of worked, but it didn't. Okay. It's usable. It will be a pain, but I'll show you. So let's go here and hit apply. Alright, so now that it's applied, we're going to move this out of the way and go in to edit mode, choose faces, and what I want to do is highlight this face, hold shift, this face, this face, this face, this face, this face, and this face, and hit X, faces. So now I'm left with a skull that looks like this. So why did it do that? It's because it has an internal gut system and it wants to be fussy. It happens a lot. so just gotta learn to love it. So it does have a hole in it still right here. I'm not going to fix that just yet. So now we're going to mirror it over onto the other side, just to get rid of everything else. Delete the box and deal only with this small little mesh. Okay, and here's how it goes. First, you go into edit mode. Okay, grab your face, grab the face in the very center, and if you notice that it has like this going on, you want the furthest face out. So this one, it looks to be the furthest face out. Mesh, snap, cursor to selected, then jump into object mode. Object, snap, object, set origin, origin to 3D cursor. There it is. There we go. So now that's the very center. Hit N on the keyboard and you're going to see there's rotations on this mesh, so we have to get rid of those. You go object, apply, rotation scale. Everything's cleared out. I'm just going to save this scene. Save it as after 2. And then we're going to end up mirroring it. So that was the cut phase. Now let's go into the mirroring phase. Alright, so in the mirroring phase, what we're going to do is just add a modifier over here called mirror. Should mirror over quite nicely. Might have some things that we have to clean up, like this double spine here, but you can see not too bad. It does have an internal plane. See that internal plane right there? That thing? So that internal plane, let me tell you something about that. It's kind of a pain to deal with. So what we want to do is eliminate that. So we're going to go and close that out just for a sec. We're going to hit the X and we're going to get rid of this internal plane. So we're going to go into edit mode and take this object right here, and I like to go select linked flat faces and then X faces. Okay, so we got something that looks like this, which is a lot better to deal with. Alright, so now we go back into object mode and do that mirror thing again. So mirror should mirror over the same. I look down the center, I don't see any weirdness that occurred. Okay, there's obviously some holes in the mesh still, but that's okay. We'll fix that as we go, and it looks relatively good. So we're going to go over here and apply it. Alright, so now that we have a good mirrored object, it's got, look at the ears on both sides, it's got the teeth on both sides, it's got everything that we need. This is definitely not 3D printable. So the next few steps are going to be needed in order to actually make it 3D printable. It can't have this big deep crevice on the inside. It's not really relevant. It collects a lot of resin, and it's just generally a kind of a pain in the butt to deal with. So I generally just seal that off. I'll have to fix this hole right here. So there's a lot of repair on the mesh still, but there's a lot of lessons on this mesh. So I'm just going to save the mesh, stop the video, and then go on to the next part where we start cleaning up holes and start filling the internal part of the mesh. Alright, so to fill the second hole, what we're going to do is do the same trick. We're going to go in edges, we're going to go to select, we're going to go to select by trait, non-manifold. Okay, then we're going to go into X-ray mode, and we're going to kind of look at it and see which one do we want to fill. So you can see there is, you got to use your imagination a little bit here. Alright, so kind of see it. Then I get this. Control. I'm going to deselect all the ones that go on the outside of the character. Going to deselect everything that's here, and this is the hole I want to fill right here. I also see some lines. Okay, let's try F. See what happens. Alright, let's go to weight shaded mode, and sure enough it filled that in pretty nicely. Good. So now we got the internal hole patched up. Looks like there's one more internal patch that's down there. See it right there? Sweet. So we could just select none. And go select trait non-manifold. Okay, we go back into X-ray mode. Repeat the same process. Control. Control. And F on the keyboard. Go back into shaded mode. There we go. It looks like we only got one more hole left. You see it right there? Awesome stuff. Yep, there's that hole. We got all these little holes too. All these little holes though, those are going to be saved for ZBrush. The bigger holes, not so much. Okay, X-ray. Repeat process. On the keyboard. Go back into shaded mode. Check out your work. Alright, now I'm going to show you how to smooth this out so it has the uniform geometry. I don't know if this is a hole or not. I don't think this is a hole. No. So some of this mesh right here, you could print it and it will turn out, but I don't like the internal cavities. I always make just two versions. One that has the internal cavities for people that just are die-hard fans of that, and one that's more 3D printed friendly. So I'll show you. Alright, so now to clean up some of this stuff, I used the sculpt mode. Okay. I also turn on viewport display wireframe so I can get the idea where this is at. And then I go into this right here, simplify. And simplify allows you to click on this area. Now you can see it doesn't do much, right? So under the brush, you get this thing called Dynatop. Okay, this will destroy your textures, by the way. So I'm not really in it for the textures. I'm in it for the mesh. So hit OK. Alright, so now when you go to click, it will add polygons to that area. And it won't move much. And if you want to add, let's say, Dynatop, you want to add a little bit denser there. So let's say I want 3 pixels to kind of match everything else. That might help later when you go to sculpt on it. So there we go. That area is now fixed and sculptable. Now some of these areas don't require that level of detail. So I go back to 12. Go in here. Sometimes it takes some adventuring. In fact, a lot of this on the inside doesn't require to be so high mesh. So if you want to like lean up some polygons here. if you did this little number right here, don't worry, just grab 3 for a sec, kind of scrub that area. And this over here too. Okay, now I'll take off of wireframe and just kind of inspect it a little bit. Hold shift to get rid of some of this. Kind of look on the inside. There's not much you can be doing in here. I do hold shift a little bit. Kind of MSUing it. Yeah. If you know what that acronym is. There we go. I'm pretty happy with that. This right here I can kind of repair later. Do see some fractals over here that I might be able to fix. This might be an easy fix. Yeah, that's an easy fix. Nice. I do see this a little anomaly. See this like weird stray line. So hopefully that is the line for the center and not something else. Alright, what about this here, right here? I don't like this. So I'm going to smooth that out just with a smaller brush. You can see all these little like weirdness that occurs. Okay, so Dynatop's still on and Simplify is still on. So the nice thing about this is it kind of fills holes. You hold shift to smooth and you let go to simplify, and then you hold shift to smooth and shift to smooth, and you just repeat that process over and over again. Again, not too much detail here is needed because ZBrush will take care of the rest. So now I got it kind of ZBrush proof, so I'm going to take it into ZBrush and knock out a few things. I'm going to separate by loose parts first and then take it into ZBrush. So separating by loose parts means that is there anything that I missed on the model? Okay, to do that you just go into edit mode. Okay, you go mesh, separate by loose parts. There could be things in the inside of this mesh. Could be floaties. See the little floaties? Tons of little floaties. So you go into object mode. And move the mesh. And you can see all the floaties. Okay, this happens when you boolean and add it together. Okay, so what you do is you go select invert, X, delete. Now you got a dog, you got one mesh, and it doesn't have all the little floaty things on the inside. Alright, let's take it to ZBrush, beat it around a little bit, and go from there. Alright, so to go into ZBrush, we just go File, Export, and go for an OBJ. Turn on selection only. This was my original mesh. This is after. I'm going to call this one after 2. So I have a way back just in case. ZBrush is a very expensive program. Well worth it. Very worth it. If you're going to clean up meshes professionally. You can do all of this in ZBrush 2 or Blender 2. In fact, you could probably leave it just the way it is right now, minus the cavities being filled in, and it'll be alright. The cavities I do fix in Blender later on. That's a long video though. I don't know if I want to do that, but we can do it. If you're watching and you're like really interested in this stuff and are really into cleaning up meshes, this is an awesome video for you. There's so many tips and tricks for you, but it could be long as hell. Really. Alright, so let's go into ZBrush. So I'm just going to jump into a Z-sphere. This program is kind of odd. It's not a lesson in ZBrush, but I'm just going to import my after 2 object. In this program, I'm using a feature called Dynameshing, and what it does, it definitely cleans out everything I miss. Would you like to remove all? Yes. Okay, only 2. Good. So 2 unused vertices, I can live with that. So Dynamesh is down here. You turn up the resolution all the way and you hit Dynamesh. Now you have like a 6 million polygon mesh. Yep, 5.7. Nice. Polygon math. Good times. So this mesh is 100% 3D printable now. But you'd have to lower it down first before we do that. And that gets all rid of every maluniform geometry in this thing too, by the way. So certain things I like to do here, I use the slash. So you go into your brushes and you go into here and you go to S because there's a million brushes. That weans it down. Then you look for /3. Okay, so /3 is pretty sweet because you can over exaggerate detail and bring it out. You make a little tiny brush. The Z intensity I would lower down just a little bit until you get the feel of it. Okay, good. A little bit more. There we go. Okay, so this will, you can see what it's doing. This mesh is symmetrical. Somewhat. So in order to do that, you go into transform, activate symmetry, and it should be X symmetry. just to check that. Yes. So being symmetrical, it will cut down on a huge amount of time here. I just like to over exaggerate a few details in areas. And also bring out some of the details that should have been here but didn't. You already see that's a huge improvement, right? Okay, holding shift, I'm just kind of softening up some of these features. Randomly doing it too, so it doesn't look too symmetrical. There was no any cracks in this model. You know, it's like no skull fracture parts. So a skull fracture kind of looks like, you know, like that. Yeah. So there was none of that in this dog model. Almost want to add one just to be kind of cool, but yeah. Getting some nerd, anatomy nerd that goes, hey, there is no fracture lines in a dog. So, oh, the emails you get though. Alright, well, this is looking pretty sweet, I won't lie. I mean, like, I don't see too much I need to do. Maybe some of this at the very bottom where that glue was, I can kind of MSU it. So I just grab a standard brush, sub it, and then just kind of push it in some. Maybe a smudge less. I just see this texture right here. So to fakeify that, what you do is you go into so many different ways to do it. I can do a drag rack, and then I can do like this alpha right here. And we'll kind of blend it all together. While I'm in here, I can hold shift and get rid of that, and then throw some noise in here. So all this right here can be gone, and noise added. Let's bump up that noise value just a little bit. And there we go, we got all those little nostrils and everything in there. Alright, that's a pretty wild skull. So we just exported out. So I'll show you how to do that because it's 5 million polys. We're going to have to reduce it in the next part. Alright, to get it out of this program and 3D printable, first off you must go into plugin, go into pre-process current. This is under the decimation master. So Z plugin, decimation master, pre-process current. This could take a second. You'll probably end up seeing me cut this part out. Alright, after that, then I go into decimation. I choose about 20% and decimate current. Lower you go on this, the lower your polygons you go. There we go, back to the 1.14, which is actually pretty good for a 3D print. So I'm just going to export that. And now this is where scale comes in. So I'm not really done with the model. This is where I have to rescale the model back to the original that I scanned it from. There's so bad tools within ZBrush to do that. Blender is far superior when it comes down to real-world object space. So here's my original. I'll import my new one. So there is after 3. So now I gotta go measure my original skull just to see how many millimeters it is. So I need to know the millimeters it's in. Object, set origin to geometry, and I'll just scale it up just a little bit so I know which one's which. Alright, so I'll be back with the measurements. And I just need the measurement from here to here on it. Alright, so my original mesh, or original skull, was 140 millimeters at Y. So I grab this white circle, and then I scale this up. Now this could be tricky sometimes, but what I'll do is I'll make sure that I have all the transforms cleared out. Reason for that is sometimes it will give you a fake reading, and you gotta go back to set to origin geometry. So you're paying attention to these numbers, not these numbers. Okay, again 140 in Y. There we go. So now It's real world. Alright, so that's how you scale it. Pretty easy, right? You just measure it in millimeters. Now we export it as still, and then we're going to bring it into Chitabox. And I'm going to print it overnight, and that way I have something to look at and be in all over. So I do that. So after 3, just kind of matching those numbers up so I know which one goes to what. Alright, and then I'm just going to go right into Chitabox. Hopefully that doesn't burn me. Chitabox. I always lose this program. Chitabox. We're not going to be doing too much in this program. Just want to export it out just to get a read of the model to see how it looks overnight. I'm using Chitabox Basic. Pro's kinda cool, but not really. I don't see any need for Pro. They do have a couple features where you can kind of tweak a couple things on the supports. That's about it. I kind of like the interface better on this one though. So this has got a little thing in there. I gotta delete that out, and then I'm just gonna open. So 140 millimeters. I might have to print it this way. Probably going to complain about something. Always does. Wow, didn't complain about anything. That's awesome. Alright, so yep, it does look a little big. So I'm going to go into the top view. Almost looks too big. So let's make sure that it came in at 140Y. Yeah, it did. It's kind of cool though. It's worth the print. Yep, gonna do it. Okay, so it's already kind of hollow. I could print it more hollow. Let me see what it looks like. So I'm going to go more hollow, but I'm going to do a wall thickness here of 2 mil. Oh yeah, that'll save tons of resin. Okay, so did you see all those little areas? Tons of little like things. So now we do a dig hole, and these don't have to be 2 mil. Let's load it at the 1.5. We fill these in later. Oh, I didn't like that. There we go. Add hole. There we go. So what I'm going to do is put a hole here. And a hole here. So we can fill these holes in later. But that's going to drain the resin. Looked like there was kind of cavities here. There we go. So we got some holes. Then I take the plugs, so I unselect them, select only the plugs and delete them. I don't need the plugs. I just use resin to patch those holes up. That should be sufficient enough to get rid of most of the resin on the inside. Alright, last but not least, we add some supports. I'm going to go for some medium supports. Get all. Okay. Then I'm going to add a couple heavy supports. This will add them manually. I'm going to add these on all the way around the model, just in strategic places. There we go. And then I'm going to go back to this. I'm done. So now I go to slice. Just make sure that there's no red here. Oh. Slice. And I'm going to, there's going to be another thing after that to export over to the flash drive. Okay, so I just hit save. It's going to tell you a few things here. Exposure time. How much is this going to cost? $3. You know, all that good stuff. It just feels a little big. Can't place my finger on it. All right, there we go. So at the beginning of this video, I'll show like the comparison between the new and old. So the dog, I put a 1 here. Alright, so that was that. I hope you enjoyed everything. If there's a problem after the print, you know, I'll probably end up showing the print at the very end, and then I'll show the at the very beginning to show it next to the skull and say, hey, this is what the series is all about. So this ends the conclusion of this video, unless there is a problem, and if there is, we'll solve that issue too.